Victoria!
Hello!
Victoria, tell us about the guests we've got coming to.
Oh my god, we do have an amazing lineup of guests, don't we?
We're going to have a little chat every week. Because we need a little bit of a help on a Friday afternoon, don't we, ladies?
My week has been fabulous.
Oh, it is Friday. It's time for the Friday Club. Welcome to our show. I have got three lovely ladies waiting in the wings today. So thank you for joining us. So let's see who's first this week. Here's Odessa. There she is.
Hello! It feels a bit like Cilla Black with having three options of women there, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not a blind date, is it?
It feels a bit like that when we're not all in the room straight away.
Well, that's true. That's true. Who are we missing? Here's Victoria.
Hello.
My magic.
Hi.
My magic.
Yay.
Are you well?
Happy Friday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got my cup up. I'm sorted.
Where has that week gone? It doesn't seem like
God.
5 minutes that we were here having a natter.
It does.
Was
And it was a great chat last week. It really was.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm going to start the ball rolling. I've got a question for you first, Victoria.
Oh.
What have you been up to this week?
Wow, it's been a crazy week. So it started Monday where I had to stop my kitchen from flooding. The first time
nice.
in 10 years because of the rainwater, but we managed it. We didn't flood, so that was okay. And Tuesday, I went to see Grease, the musical.
Ah,
Ooh, what a school night.
Yeah, I know. I took my daughter to see Grease. We had so much fun, and I sung my heart out, as you do.
were you a horse on Wednesday?
Hey, she was a pony.
And then it's been a lot of networking, and I hit a PB yesterday in the gym, so I'm pretty chuffed with that.
Fine.
So
Right. Am I the only one that doesn't do gym, or have you stopped, Odessa?
I stopped. Yeah, I had to stop.
well, no, I train. So
Yeah.
on the angled leg press, I hit 267 kilograms. So yeah,
Well done.
What does that
hard to
mean?
say that.
Does that
A lot
mean
of
anything?
It's the amount of weight that you can lift in your set.
Okay, I'm impressed.
Yeah, no, I'm pleased with that. And then lots of networking yesterday and this morning, and then ready to see you guys before networking this evening. So I'm a bit networked
Oh my
out.
goodness, you're on a roll.
I am.
So
Wow,
proud of you. I love that.
that's too much. That's far too much. What have you been up to this week? Odessa, that is.
That's a great question.
Why the big sigh?
I can't remember. I don't even know what day it is today. Monday.
Look, there. See what it says there.
Friday. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. No, but like when you get to that point of the week where you're saying, "Oh, happy Wednesday." I did this yesterday, and the person that I was talking to said, "Yeah, but it's Thursday." So I don't really have concept of time. It would appear. No, it's I've had some really nice one-to-ones. I've been working with an agency to find themselves a new PPC contractor, which has been really interesting because I didn't realise, because I had to kind of learn a little bit more about it in order to find the right person. And it's really interesting. There's so much about paid advertising that I didn't realise. It's quite a bit more of a fine art than I expected. I don't know what I was expecting, but definitely. And then we've had a new client. We've had a really interesting product demo. They've got a content creators, like when you do affiliate links and stuff like that, how you can manage it for product demos and stuff. And that was really interesting as well. It's nice to see useful tech coming out rather than solving a problem we don't actually need solved, but everyone thinks we can because AI is involved. So it's been a mixed week, but no, mostly good, mostly a bit of learning, which has been quite nice because I like to dip outside of my realms of LinkedIn and other bits and pieces. So yeah, it's been good.
And what about yourself, Ashley?
Yeah. So this week it's all networking as well. So yesterday we missed you, Odessa. Yesterday we did LinkedIn Local, and as soon as I finished that, I was straight in the car. I actually drove. The whole idea of setting up LinkedIn Local in Sidmouth so I could walk to it.
I know.
But I drove because as soon as I finished there, I was over in Honiton doing a talk for the local council. So they've got this Prosper thing where they help local businesses. So I was there doing a talk, and all these people are like, never seen LinkedIn, not doing LinkedIn, all that. And it's like they're all converted now. And it was brilliant fun, absolutely brilliant fun. And a proud moment, close to tears sort of moment. I stood there with my flag and sort of like said, and this is why you should do LinkedIn, because that features in, there's loads of reasons why we do LinkedIn. But because I'm talking in Canada, it was just sort of like, that was like a mic drop moment. So yeah, it was brilliant. And then I went to another networking event last night as well. But I started off the week with a car show. So we had a local car show in town last week. So yeah, it's been a great week. I am glad it's Friday. I'm going to go and have a lie down after this. We need to bring in our guest, don't we?
We do.
We do.
We certainly do. We're going to big her up, or should we let her tell us? I've known Jane forever, right? I've known Jane forever. She's given me some great advice. She's really, really helpful. But she's also a charming, charming lady. So let's bring her in. Here's Jane Tarrant. Hello.
Hello. I've even been to go and get a cup of tea while doing that. No, I'm joking.
It's a bit cold, isn't it, Jane?
It is. I'm literally sitting here in one of my mum's old jumpers from when she was my age. And it's so like snuggly, and I'm like, I totally get it. Except she wore corduroys and I'm wearing leggings, but I feel like I need to find some excellent corduroys because I have decided.
Corduroys are amazing.
Do you know what I've got? I've got fleece-lined leggings.
That's so exciting. I must admit, I do have something similar upstairs.
What's going on?
But we're not quite there yet.
There's a bare naked knee.
I'm still in shorts, ladies.
You stepped outside recently, or is it just the yellow makes it feel like it's sunny all the time?
I just live in permanent sunshine. Hey, we haven't said hello to all the lovely people that are watching.
We haven't. That's very short.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Miha.
Hi,
And we've
Miha.
also got Mark here.
Again. Hi, Mark.
That's why they come triplets. We're all different ages. So that doesn't work, does it? We're not even Irish triplets.
I mean, I'd take it if I were you, mate, to be honest.
Do you not feel remembered at least by the fact there's three of you and he's saying that? It feels like you're special.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, we know we're
special. Yeah, we don't know in what realm of speciality here, but we're something.
So Jane, let's get back to our guest.
Yes.
You breathe, don't you?
I do. Funny enough. I know. The important factor here being a lot better than I used to, which I think is the point we kind of need to draw on there, as opposed to just the fact that we do it, which we all obviously are very aware of.
Yeah, I think we all do it wrong, don't we? From I remember our chat before, that actually there's a lot to be said for the art of breathing.
There is. And also understanding that we've got a lack of education, and then also a lot of repeating misinformation. The classic being like, take a deep breath, and someone shows you lifting into their upper chest, shallow breath, and you're like, and this is being repeated where? In films, yoga sessions, at work, in schools, at home. Like, it is one of my biggest pet hates for life. So until we start changing that, I can't retire.
Jane, can I ask how you got into breathing work?
I thought you were saying, how did you get into breathing?
How did you get into breathing?
It was the first thing I did when I was born.
It's like I was naked, I came into the world, and it was amazing. So
it just chose me.
I know, it did, luckily, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So I am basically in two parts about this. One is I recognize when I was a child that I had the sort of inability to breathe through my nose properly, so I knew it felt too small. I love how everyone's just like, I can't even breathe right now, I'm laughing so hard. And then I was really, really aware at that point that I was breathing so much through my mouth, but I didn't realize that was a problem, that somebody maybe would have told me. And so I started off sort of mouth breathing, snoring. My entire facial development is much more impacted. So my teeth are much narrower, crooked, needed braces. My jaw is more set back, longer, thinner face, and my airway is impacted in terms of size. But I didn't know that how I breathed and how I chewed and, how much you breastfed and all these sorts of things can impact that. So when I found out that actually breathing through my mouth was a problem, and I could retrain my nose and actually be able to feel comfortable with that again when I was around 30. This blew my mind. It had been 23
Wow.
years before somebody had told me, from me realizing I had this issue at 7 to actually hearing completely randomly on a podcast, not even bother to Google it. And that's what really like sends me just really lights me up, because it's just like, if I didn't hear in that long and I knew I had the issue, I didn't even think to Google it, then there's a big problem here in terms of education. I think actually just wetting himself. He's just gone off screen. He's like, I can't
So the problem is that as soon as I see somebody else laughing, even if I wasn't in the mood, I cannot help myself. I seem to be better at recovery than he is. Going back to what you were saying, I think that's absolutely fascinating that at 7, that was something you identified. And I think that there are so many things, like you just said, I'm completely blown away by all the things that are impacted by a habit that you've unconsciously picked up. Because a lot of the stuff that we talk about on LinkedIn is about habits and finding good habits and keeping them going and all this kind of thing. But this is obviously something that nobody trains you how to breathe correctly. Nobody talks about it. Nobody picks up and said, I think your daughter's got a problem. So for you at that age to have such control over your health, or at least such an understanding and awareness, like, how was that trying to communicate with the adults that mattered?
Well, the thing is, I didn't communicate it. That's my point. So I was aware I had the issue that my nose felt too small. I was aware I was mouth breathing. I was aware I was snoring. I was aware that not everyone else did that. But I was also really trusting of the adults in my life, of like, well, surely if that was a problem, someone would have told me. You would expect, a parent, a doctor, a dentist, an orthodontist, someone somewhere along the line should have said something to me. And yes, I probably should have asked the question, but I think the problem is that we trust those in our society to tell us if something is really a problem. And therefore, it's not just me who's never heard that how we breathe matters. And so we've got everybody else as well in the same boat.
They don't always pick up on it either. So my middle son, who's nearly 22, and we took him to ENT specialists as a child, and they didn't pick up on the fact that he's got a deviated septum. So he's now almost 22, awaiting a date for surgery to have it corrected. And that affects his breathing every day. So one side of his nostril, he can't breathe through.
At all.
And it's been like that for years. At all.
Okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of people. I mean, I read a stat the other day, and I never know these things are true because you never know where they pick them up from. But it said something about maybe 80% of people have a deviated septum. And that's not normal, but it's common. And, we are, as a species now hugely impacted in terms of our face and airway development. We're not as wide and broad and larger airway as we should be. And so when somebody has a deviated septum and they tell me they're going for surgery, my first thing is, whoa, before you're having surgery, being like one of the only options you'll get through the medical world is, have you actually looked at retraining your breathing habits? Because we can feel like something is too small, or like our nose is too small, just because our CO2 tolerance is too low, which we degrade over time through poor heat breathing. Now, if there's a full restriction and you cannot get any air, then maybe surgery is something that you might want to consider. But I'd still be saying breathing retraining is important before and after surgery, because you're going to do it at some point. You're better to know what you can do before you go through, potentially a risky procedure that might not have been needed. And that's usually my advice.
He's been waiting about 2 years for the surgery date. He's seen multiple specialists and stuff. So it's something ongoing. But even though we took him to the specialist as a child, when he was 3 or 4, it wasn't picked up then until he was late teens. And that was after a couple of years of him complaining. And typical teenager didn't want to go to a doctor until one day he just went, yeah, okay, Mum, I need to go and get this checked out. And we took him. And now, obviously, like I said, he's awaiting a surgery date. But NHS waiting lists.
Make sure he retrains his breathing afterwards, because he's already degraded his CO2 tolerance, most likely, if he's been using his mouth, which means it will feel harder to breathe through his nose. Even if he opens his nose up, he may not accept it in his brain until he's actually gone through that work. So something to bear in mind.
Yeah, something to bear in mind.
This is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating.
I think so, which is why it's my whole life right now, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm like, if there is ever a time that I manage to not talk about breathing, I am so impressed with myself. Like, to get through anything, like a party, a wedding, a train journey, anything without it ever coming up is like a real accomplishment. I'm yet to achieve that this year.
Ashley's muted.
Ashley's muted. He is. He's like,
how's that happened?
Because I turned it up, I was giggling too much. Jeez, what are you doing to me, ladies?
It could be a lot quieter with that, actually.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. But the thing is, right? We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So your brother Victoria and yourself, Jane, in early life, like that's what we all do. You see people that have got, impaired hearing, impaired vision. They just think that life is blurry. Color blindness. So my daughter, she's got aphantasia. All right. Has anyone ever heard of that?
I'm assuming it's got nothing to do with Mickey Mouse.
No. So right. So can you remember our show last week, ladies? Yeah. In your mind now, you can envision seeing Andy. Yeah. She can't do any of that.
Okay.
She cannot imagine. Sort of like, you can visualize when you walk down to the shop and you went past. She can't do that. And she only found out recently because she was talking to her husband, and he went, "What do you mean?" And so then she phoned me and she said, yeah, of course I can. I can, and she can't do that. But she's lived her life thinking that that's how everybody is. So
it's a bit like with my daughter's neurodiversity. We didn't realise for a long time because that's how she's always been. She's never been any different, So, yeah, it's one of those things you do sometimes go by without realising.
But breathing is more important.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's kind of.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
So, Jane, tell us how you became a TEDx speaker.
Ooh. So I started kind of the speaking journey within this field, speaking at Ideas Fest a couple of years ago, and gave a couple of talks over a couple of days. And in the audience, Alex Merry was there, who's a public speaking coach, and he created a community called Mic Drop. And he also has kind of an accelerator program. And I joined this being like, I really want to take, speaking seriously. This is an area that I feel like I really need to excel in to get this message out there. And I wasn't yet kind of actively thinking I'd do TEDx. I thought that was a long time in the future, as did I think my book was a few years in the future as well. And then in 2023, I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do this year. So I really put it up there on my banner, and I visualized it, and I drew pictures with it, and I did everything I could to kind of get my head in the frame that this was going to happen. And I put quite a bit of money into training myself, but also a huge amount of time. And then I had to apply to various TEDx places until I got the right one with the right fit, with the right person who really believed in what it was that I was going to get out there. And I was really fortunate, actually, because I got quite close to doing it in Bristol, which would have been about 100 people, and I ended up getting Newcastle, which was 1,000 people. Wow. So the experience was incredible, and just getting on that stage and just being like, okay. And I remember going up to one of the organizers and being like, can I please have a hug? Right before I went on, he was like, what? And I was like, can I have a hug? It will help my nervous system. So like I had a little hug right before I went on stage, just to like make myself feel safe. That made the world of difference. And yeah, I mean, luckily knowing how to get into my breath and really bring it down into the diaphragm and not allow this anxiety breathing. I lost it once. I replayed the entire video, look back, and it was one breath that went to my upper chest, and then I brought it back just when I stumbled over my lines. And bearing in mind, I hadn't learnt a script. I learnt a sort of a flow, a kind of concept, 6 bullet points, and the entire thing was ad-libbed based on that. So it was practice and practice and practice, but it was always different. And on the day, I just was like, I had no idea if I was going to mention the G spots of breathing or whatever it is that I sort of was like considering, and ended up making a little joke on the day. And it was just, I really feel that you have to be prepared, but you also have to be ready to let go and just feel what your best thing is. But yeah, that was an amazing experience.
Wow. You see, when it comes to public speaking, if I'm not prepared with a script or have notes, then I just get overwhelmed. It's too much. And I've been working with a really good mentor to help me with my public speaking. I can just about manage coping in a room full of 30 people, let alone 1,000. That's pretty impressive.
It's a performance sort of art, isn't it? It's that feeling of being able to I just had to trust that I know my shit. I talk about it every day. I've said it in so many different ways. It doesn't actually matter how it comes out. It's still sort of makes sense and gets wrapped round into a thing. I know the sequence of the things that I want to get across. All I had to do was make sure it was practiced within a certain time frame, and that I had time to bring in a story and I had time to bring in some active elements. So it was bang on 15 minutes pretty much, and that was wonderful.
Yeah.
My favourite number.
15 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I wonder where they got that idea from.
A wise friend said to me before, because obviously I was talking with him about the fact I was quite nervous around the public speaking, and the point he made was no one else knows what you're going to say.
Yeah.
So when I'm there thinking, oh, I fluffed it, or my nerves have got to me, he went, just take a breath and go with it. No one else knows what you're going to say.
Yeah, and actually you're more human if you're like, and I have completely forgotten what I was going to say. Just being able to actually embrace the fact that you're a human standing on a stage and people expect you to be that, not you're a robot that needs to kind of repeat lines. And I went to one of the TEDx events right before mine, and they had been scripted, and so scripted that they were like deers in headlights every time they forgot their line. And I was like, that is not me. We're not doing that. I am not even going down that route. I don't even want that as an option.
Wow.
I would rather stand there and be like, and what am I going to tell you next? And work it out, because every single line I worked out as I went, knowing that that's what I wanted.
So were you nervous?
I was excited. And I could feel the nerve feeling.
You changed that.
I feel that there is always the same thing. Whenever I have a big event or something like that, it always goes straight to my stomach. And unlike many people, you go off to the toilet, you deal with that, you come back, you feel much better. I feel that that's a sensible approach for the nervous system to kind of get that excitement through, and then you're ready. And once I've gone through that phase, I'm usually fine. And then after that, I get really, really excited, because there's no sort of
stopping you
discomfort, shall we say, or anything that feels odd. But I think we should be honest about these things. I think we should call it the pre-speaking cat poo. But no, it's an important one for just bringing in that breath and doing anything you can to make yourself feel safe. So for me, a hug is always one of my favorites wherever I go, a corporate place, whatever. If there's someone there to welcome me when I arrive and I get a hug, that always makes a huge difference, because it does just settle you and tell you that actually you're there to have fun.
But hugs. Why are hugs important? Because you know I love hugs, Odessa.
You do love it. I love a good hug as well. We have a set number that we need as well.
And I had that conversation with someone recently. I was like, I'm a hugger, be warned.
Oh, good. Well, we should be doing this in person. We can have a great
especially as we're only up the road from each other as well.
I know. I mean, I love that kind of oxytocin, that feeling of just being like, if you're hugging someone, you're unlikely to be in a conflict situation. Well, you could be in a conflict situation, but it makes you feel a little bit safer. It's a better part of the conflict situation. So for that moment, you can feel safer than you did. And that's a really important one for me.
Go on.
Go on, carry on. No, you carry on it.
No, I was going to say, because I've read a lot of stuff about hugs and how much of it is true. Again, not entirely sure, but it's the length of time that you're hugging that person for. Because I think a lot of people, they go, oh, I've had a hug today. And I'm like, but have you really? Like that kind of cursory, just come in for one. That's almost more awkward than not having a hug at all. Like that's not going to help you if it's not the right type of hug. I was going to say,
because it's to do with the endorphins, isn't it? That releases when you have that contact and that hug.
And also, it's about how they embrace it. Like if I go up to my husband and he's not in the mood for a hug, and I get a bit of a stiff tap out, and I literally get like this sort of quick tap on the back, and I'm like, no. I was like, come back here and do it properly, and then I'll leave you alone for the next few hours. But until you do, I am going to be so annoying.
I've had these very same conversations,
and he's like, oh, okay, and then we have a little relax into a proper hug, and then I'm like, fine, you go and have your day.
But isn't it that right? That end of the day hug, when you just sort of like sigh and you relax into that person. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
Although it can go a little bit too far sometimes, and then you can be a little bit flatulent. We can. You're like, oh, sorry, so relaxed.
That is not where I thought we were going. I think probably mine was worse. I like that we went there. Then there's a hug, not a hug.
But that's an ultra level of comfort, that one.
we've got a few comments here. Mark seems to be a bit of a comedian today. What do you call it when a cat stops breathing? What do you do when a cat stops breathing? You give it meow to meow.
Very
I saw
good.
these. It was very hard to
Was
keep.
that in line with the cat poo joke, or was that?
Yeah, no, I think that was a little bit earlier. He said he was having trouble breathing last night. He think his wife wasn't holding the pillow down tight enough. So happy Friday, Sanjay. Thanks for joining us. And also, where else did he say here? Mark also says that always hug your enemies, because then you'll know what size your hole needs. The hole needs to be in your garden. And finally, on hugs, so nice to be listening in. I recently did a little podcast on hugs with Kate titled. So this is making me feel happy that you're chatting about it. Tina, I am a hugger. And so every time people come to my LinkedIn local, I sort of like, they know that I'm a hugger and they hug me. And then we get new people in. And it's sort of like, not this time. Not this time. And you know those that aren't huggers, because when you do that, they run away.
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely sure sometimes when you do that what we're going for. Just saying. But I think it was really hard during COVID, and I think there's a lot that needs to be said, because I remember when we first started doing those in-person events, we were asking permission. It was an awkward thing. We had to reintroducing what it meant to hug another person. And again, another thing that I've been reading is, regularity of hugs, how many you need a day. And I don't think we actually stop and think about how many moments we've had of that personal, physical connection that with another human being that releases the good hormones and makes us feel good.
It's not the hugs that I find awkward. It's, when you go like in for a hug and they're going to kiss you on the cheek, but you're not quite sure which side to go. That's the bit that's really awkward.
Proposition to hug. I only want to hug.
Yeah, exactly.
Breathe, Jane. Breathe. So I want to tell a little story, because Jane, you know that I use you in my training because you're just brilliant on LinkedIn. So what is it you love? What is it you love about LinkedIn?
I love that most of the content on there is shite, and so it's really not hard to stand out.
Wow.
I like that I can sort of adapt and play and learn and try, and even my sort of not great posts are still okay. Whereas if I was on a different platform, some like Instagram, where you have to really know how to make a proper reel, and there's a lot more like you've got to really train for that in a different way. But I also really like the fact that LinkedIn allows you to really get used to using words. So it's pushed me as a writer. I'd never considered myself a writer, although I published a book last year, a children's book, because apparently, by the way, I've realized, side note, that if you give an educational book on breath, like Breath by James Nestor, to an adult, it will just usually sit on their shelf. Whereas if you give them a children's book, then they read it to their child at bedtime and actually learn the education, which is why I went for the children's book. But that was a side note. Anyway, the writing side was okay. So the writing side was that concept of, if I can work on it for long enough and it's a little bit each day, then you've got the benefit of, you can put video, you can do pictures, you can do all the other channels do, but then you've got this beautiful element of bringing in the right writing as well, and learning how to, put a hook in, or start a story, or, do a listicle, or whatever it is people want to read, but just and injecting a bit of real personality rather than just sort of feeling like every time you have to be on camera, which I love, but not. I just think people need a variety, and I think this is the most varied platform so far.
Yeah, and you do some great posts, don't you?
Thank you.
You do some great posts,
and making better. I'm still on my learning journey.
but it's like you say, it is a learning journey, and we're all trying different things. I saw your bum the other day, didn't I?
Yes, most things.
It was a post all about your QR code. All right, which is on the back of your T-shirt. Now, when I had a QR code on the back of my T-shirt, you had it. You've got it right at the bottom. Mine was bigger and at the top. All right.
Do you know why though?
Contest on size.
You've probably got a better bum than me.
I am not going to go there. But I have long hair. so I don't have the space.
Ah,
I had no choice.
I don't think of these things.
We can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to tie my hair up and feel like not me in order to put a QR code on.
Very
Nice.
clever. Very clever.
I just happen to be wearing some bright yellow trousers at the same time, which draws the eye to then see the two together.
Okay. If you got the said yellow trousers there.
These ones, the famous
The
famous
bum trousers. So Drew, tell us about this post then, because it went pretty mad, didn't it?
As you can imagine, I mean, it wasn't like insane. It was about 18,000 impressions or something, which
good.
is, probably about 18 more than the average okay posts that I do. And some of the other good ones, that have been quite good, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6,000, but I don't get super high ones the whole time. This isn't my norm. So I was a bit like, this is going quite far. And obviously there was a range on there. I had quite a few new followers, particularly male ones, of which I had to just sort of, audit the situation. But actually, I must say, I do not get the level of sort of ickiness that some women get on this platform. And I think I'm very careful about what I do and don't do and what I say. And it's not meant to be on us to impact that. But I don't want that to be coming my way. So I have to be very careful there's a fine line between quite literally the cheekiness of that post and something just a little bit too far over the line. And I'm very careful that I audit anything I put out that is fun, maybe a little bit risque, maybe even talking about sex. Maybe I don't mind these things. I love a taboo subject, as we've already found out today. But there's a line that you've got to be just close enough to. And if you're going to go over it, you've got to bring some sort of humor or something. Otherwise, it can go very, very wrong, I think. So this was quite a fun post. But the real part was it was sharing their story. It was, how did I end up teaching Olympians at the Olympics how to breathe? And obviously people have been following the journey. It was very cool. And it was that t-shirt above that bum on that day that somebody scanned me and they saw me teaching and they saw that and they were already on my website checking me out. They stood around and waited till I finished to approach me and say, I'd really like to chat to you. Olympians don't know how to breathe, and it'd be great if you could teach them. And obviously,
you'd have thought if anyone was going to know how to breathe, it would be an Olympian. So what were the Olympians doing wrong? Hey, and can you teach us? Is there any exercises that we could do today, Jane? And people watching could join in?
We could have a look at a couple of things, maybe some wearing red flags or some big errors that could be helpful. So
stop breathing into my mic now.
I can't hear it. So there's a range of things that we use as like a red flag. So for example, some Olympians, for example, were breathing really well generally, but there were still improvements they could be making. Some of them were really well educated on their thing, especially like cyclists and swimmers. They seem to be a little bit more into knowing about this because they really, really need it for certain elements of their sport. But still, there's areas as a human they maybe have not really been explained to, and they've maybe got there by default or close to it, but not quite fully. But a lot of the runners and decathletes and sailors and even some swimmers as well, some of them had complete restriction in their ribs. They didn't have the sort of the awareness that a deep breath is actually deep and not shallow, and so there was perception issues as well. So just like any other human anywhere else, there was no real difference. You get some that are better, some that are worse, and some that are a little bit more self-educated. But the point is, none of them have been taught how to breathe as a human and then an athlete in that situation, and that just blew my mind. So one of the red flags for some people is with a balloon. And did you bring one, Ashley, by the way?
May have one here.
Okay, don't worry. So with a balloon, a red flag is that somebody who cannot blow it up. So if you sort of go into like the upper chest, for example, like most people might do, if they were thinking like a big, deep breath, they might go, and there's just nothing because there's no diaphragm push actually into that balloon. And so people think they can't blow the balloon Yeah, but it's not that you don't have big enough lungs or that there's anything wrong with you. It's purely that you just don't know how to use them.
That sounds like a much bigger issue.
I know. But something you can do something about versus like, oh, I'm just not somebody who can blow up balloons. So this is a big red flag. If you can't blow up a balloon and you find that difficult and you're constantly like passing over to someone else for the birthday parties, that generally means that you are an upper chest breather. Somebody who breathes shallow into, if we sort of think of like an upside down tree, like I have on the t-shirt I wear for my TEDx. So there's like a trunk, branches at the bottom, around sort of like where my bra strap would be. There's leaves across there. That's the main canopy. But at the top here, there's only a few leaves. So somebody who's doing that top half is only breathing into these leaves, whereas all that trunk and branches are dead space. There's nothing useful there. That's not where the gas transfer happens. So if we're not pulling it into the bottom, we're not getting like really optimal oxygenation in terms of actually bringing it in, getting it into the blood. But more importantly, we're often breathing faster and harder. So the actual oxygenation of the cells is not happening. So most people think, I need more air. And so if they struggle to breathe, they always try and get more. And it's not about so much the oxygen getting in. We're generally getting enough in all the time. In fact, sitting here, we can be like exhaling around 80% of what we're getting in. Like, that's a huge waste factor in terms of energy versus that function. I know. But when you slow your breath down, when you reduce your breath, when you use your nose holes rather than this great big gaping hole on your face here, when you actually use the bottom of your lungs and you create the time and the efficiency, we're no longer like going with our CO2, our carbon dioxide. That's our waste gas that we make from the oxygen plus the carbon from our food. And it is a waste gas, but it has a job to do before it leaves. So we have little red buses. These are amazing little red buses. I love the fact that I get to buy these off for work. So we have like, imagine 3 of these all in a line, and they're sort of all going down like on a motorway or a 3-lane road. And you want them arriving at your brain or at your cells around your body. And then you want little porters to be opening the doors. So there's 6 doors for the 3 buses, and all the oxygen that's needed, bearing in mind not all the oxygen, but all the oxygen that's needed gets off. And then the CO2 gets on as a waste gas, and then it goes back round to the lungs to be exhaled and it collects more. Now, if you are dumping your CO2 too fast, if you are an overbreather, which that's what I'd retrain, somebody who's an overbreather, which is pretty much everyone, but obviously there are levels. So you've got those with problems, you've got those with optimization, and then you've got the middle ground where most people think, oh, I don't really care enough. But there's this area of overbreathing. So shallow, fast, hard, loud, through the mouth. Any of this is overbreathing. Snoring is overbreathing. So when we change this, we get to reduce how much CO2 is being plummeted. And so we can widen back to those lovely motorways. But when you're dumping too fast, the CO2 is a dilator, it's a widener. And it's also the porters that let the oxygen off the bus. So if you get rid of it too quickly, you've got some. So you'll now be at like a dual carriageway or 2-lane road, but you've only got maybe 3 doors opening at a time. So your delivery is the issue, whereas most people are just thinking about getting it in, and they're putting these little, like a finger pulse oximeter, so one of these little things, and you put it on your finger and you can kind of measure what your SpO2 is. So you're usually between 95 to 99% as standard. You can manipulate your breath and you can watch it go up and down a bit, but generally it's around there. And that's going to be good enough pretty much however you breathe, whether it's a bit better or a bit worse. But when you think about what's going to your muscles, so you don't feel so tired during that run, so you can keep going, or what's going to your brain when you can't think as clearly, this is the really big part that we need to be changing. And those who are having panic attacks usually have very low tolerances to carbon dioxide. So they try and slow it down and they trigger, and then they also speed it up, and then they plummet so much it closes up, and then they can't breathe at the other end. So somebody who has become an overbreather and experiences anxiety, panic attacks, high allergies, asthma issues where it actually really bothers you, this is usually they've just closed this space that they live between, and instead we can retrain our breathing habits that retrains that tolerance, that retrains the patterns of how we do it, and then suddenly everything changes, which is incredible.
So I'm asthmatic and I have inhalers, but I've got this really smart one called a turbo inhaler. So a traditional, get my words out, a traditional inhaler, you would press the button down and it squirts in the back of your mouth, and you kind of go, oh, you know, and as you're trying to breathe it in. Whereas with the turbo inhaler, it's a dry powder, so you just twist it and suck it, which is much better and less intrusive, I think. But the peak flow meter, always have, you know, since I was a teenager, I've always had to do the peak flow meters and read the breathing. So that's usually quite interesting.
Well, the peak flow meter will be impacted not so much by your lung size potentially, but by how you use them. So if you're going to do like I just did with the balloon, so we're going back to that upper chest breath, and you go, you know, not so great. If I go down to the belly and bloat there, which we're also not meant to do, but if I was to do that, I would get slightly better because at least it's going towards the diaphragm. That's the end, right?
No,
not huge. If I do it, if I do the full, ooh, I love that sound. If I do the full, oh, I can see why I was here on a Friday. Then if we do the full expansion, so I'm going to show you this expansion.
I'm so ready. Yeah.
See how wide that can go?
Yeah.
Versus this. Or this.
Wow.
Yeah. So if we can do a full all-round expansion, this is what it starts to look like in one breath. Big difference.
Nice.
That's a good party trick.
That was fun.
Love it.
So what I worry about with asthmatics particularly is that they just get the medical angle. It's all very well having an inhaler, and sometimes you need them. But there's a lot of asthmatics, for example, who will work on this sort of thing. They might continue to use their brown inhaler, but they no longer need their blue one, for example. That's not me telling somebody they shouldn't use it. That's the kind of example of what somebody might find a progression. But the point is, when somebody feels that they're struggling to breathe, it's more the anxiety on top of the asthma that's the issue, plus the fact you're breathing into the wrong area of the lungs, plus you're using your mouth, so you're actually getting more irritating things in that are going to trigger you in the first place. So it's a full holistic approach to going, oh, not just, oh, I've got asthma, so I use this and therefore I'm a goner. It's actually somebody's not told me the main area of what I need to know, and they've just given me this. And now I'm disempowered because I don't know I can do it for myself as well. So this is the gap I'm filling, is between medical, have some drugs or have some surgery, and the other option, which is, well, what can I do for myself? And should I need those things, then fine, but let's kind of look at what I can do myself. And I think we've just been hugely disempowered. I mean, for myself, I had a panic attack age 12, and I was like not the sort of girl who would have a panic attack, and yet running for help down a street, went the wrong way, you know, and I just totally overbreathed as an overbreather, a mouth breather who was, you know, head position forward, gasping to get more air because my airway was smaller and I wasn't, you know, able to kind of draw it properly into the upper chest, panicking. And then I'm like, you know, you know, and then I go to the doctor and it's, oh, you've got sport-induced asthma. Here's an inhaler. To which now one of the sportiest girls in my entire year, struggles to now go and play netball or hockey or whatever it was without panicking that I haven't had my inhaler. And so this total change of where I was at, I was fit as anything, but I was being held back by something, and it wasn't my fitness. And so this is why, for example, I now work with athletes, and like, you know, I'm taking on professional footballers at the moment, because this is an area where they breathe horribly. I mean, you just have to watch a match and you just see them, like, you know, they're running about like through the mouth, whatever, and then they sort of stop and they're like and there's some sort of apparent thing where they've been told that if they go onto their knees to like hold onto their knees, it makes them look weak, in which case they're then like sort of going into all the wrong areas, and they just don't have a bloody clue. And you're just like, these are the top athletes in the entire world, and this is what we're learning from. And so my dream is to get to the point where footballers are no longer the bad example, but are instead the good example, and they use their power of who they are and what they have to amplify this message that we need to be talking about breathing habits, right down to where we like, you know, chill out. So for example, like you go home at the end of the day and, you know, just imagine a footballer. So they've been working really hard. They get onto a bed. They're lying there like in a hotel in this plush bed, scrolling on their phone like this with a curled back, completely compromising their diaphragm. And this is their recovery. And no one's ever told them.
Wow.
Like, this is just insane.
This
I feel like we've learned so
this is
much.
clearly a bugbear.
I mean,
you've noticed.
Passion. I mean,
I love it.
just
It's
love
amazing.
the topic.
And this is the thing. This is what I'm getting from this, Odessa. It is the passion. It is absolutely incredible. But we don't know. And the trouble is with, you know, the medical advice that we get is like, do this, do that, and we do it. Like, hang on a minute, why don't you just try and breathe properly? And like you say, if our elite athletes are doing it all wrong, how on earth are we going to know? So are you saying, Jane, that if I had asthma, you couldn't cure it, but you'd make it an awful lot easier for me to breathe? Is that right?
That's basically the concept. That one, I never make a promise of a result, because you know, everybody's different and people have got to do the work. And I don't know if you've got a physical issue inside that's going to stop something. Like a snorer, I would always say, we will aim to improve your breathing, your snoring through this. But I can never say, I can guarantee I can cure your snoring, because that would be highly unethical, because I can't see inside them and see what might be impacting. So the same with this. But with an asthmatic, there are so many issues. There's perception of what they think breathing should be. There's the fear. There's the lack of empowerment around the fear. There's the fact that they're thinking the wrong thing, you know, like I need more air, as opposed to I need to deliver my oxygen and open up those buses. So there's this kind of, we work a lot around these areas, and then we change this pattern, this tolerance, this ability to actually even access. And this is wonderful. Like one of my favorite ones is my postman. The first day I actually launched like on my own, having left my old job, and it was like day one of, okay, this is it now, like scary, gonna make money through this now. And I told my my postman at the time that I was a sort of breathing coach, and he was like, sorry, a breathing coach? I was like, no, breathing. I was like, I really need to get that out better. And he ended up saying, oh, actually, you know, I've been looking into this because one of my friends did something when they were younger, and I should have done it years ago, and we ended up working together. And he came to me and we learned how to open up. And literally he came to me, he's like, the first session was worth all the money I just paid. Like, I have felt so different this week, just because he finally found his diaphragm. And then he was walking straighter. He was at like a really low CO2 tolerance. He managed to go from 8 seconds to 25 seconds in like 6 weeks, which is a long time to be able to hold your breath for before you get that trigger. And so it was this feeling of, he could really feel the difference. And he was one of my favorites, because this is the type of life, you know, yes, I can work with a footballer, but I can also work with asthmatic postman, or, you know, a teacher with panic attacks. And that's the beauty. It's such a gift to be able to, one, recognize it in someone, two, inspire them to make change, and then know how to hold their hand. Because so many people are just left with 7-minute appointments with a GP who's never been taught, and it's not their own fault. It just wasn't on their agenda. And not every GP is going to self-learn this, nor are they going to actually have the time to help. So there needs to be this education out there, and it needs to be accessible. So I'm trying my best to do, you know, the high earning stuff where I can, the publicizing where I can, and, you know, the affordable element where I can, and just trying to get as much out there as possible. I'm just
going to say, the best marketing line I've ever heard is find your diaphragm. Just like, if you don't do something with that, I'm literally sat here going, bing, there you go. Like, that's brilliant. But it's true, because we don't, I think there are so many parts of our body. We put the diaphragm in there with, you know, pancreas and all the other things that we don't quite understand, but we know that they're important. I think we only think about diaphragm when we hiccup. I don't think we actually think about it being an active part of our body that we can access if we just learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually brings me to why I coined something called the D spot. So some of you may have been following me on LinkedIn long enough to know I talked about the G spots of breathing, because I was like, well, I learned about the G spot when I was 13 from a magazine, but no one really told me about any other spots that were helpful on my body. So we will learn now.
Yes, we went there.
And exactly. And there was already something called the N spot, which is where your tongue position should go. And this is used in myofunctional therapy. Some dentists and orthodontists are now talking about it. Those who are a bit more functionally minded, which is unfortunately still rare, but it is growing. And I'm actually within circles within those people actually trying to make these changes. So that we're growing in all sorts of different areas. But the N spot existed, and I was like, this is great. This has already started the concept. And then I was like, rule of 3, great when you're speaking or educating on anything. So we've got the N spot, and then we have now the D spot. So the D spot I coined, and this is incredible, because this allows you to not only sort of undo all the shitty education that's out there and actually replace it with something helpful, like the deep breath, good if you know what you're talking about. Belly breath, not really very helpful because there's 3 parts to a belly you could breathe into and you only want one of them. So, you know, it's a bit like choose an orifice. And there's... and we went there, but I let your brains do that. I was talking about ears and noses. So we've got this concept of, by going to the D spot, we have control over where we want to go, and then we know what to do with it. So we're all going to try this. We're going to find the sternum is here, and then the split of the ribs is here, and right where that split happens, usually under a bra strap for ladies, that split there is really tight. So we go 3 fingers down from there, and it's bouncy. This is quite a bit away from your belly button. Yeah. So this is your D spot. Yeah. Your D spot, as you breathe in, should move away from you. But you should not be moving your upper chest, and you should not be moving your belly button or below. So the only movement of at rest breathing is the D spot in the outwards direction as you breathe in. A lot of people are backwards breathers, so that goes in instead of out, and this goes up. So if people who hold a lot of trauma, who've been in sort of, for example, really toxic relationships or workplaces or had childhood trauma, this is a really common one that can come up in that sort of scenario. It's not always the reason, but this is really common in that scenario. We often have just upper chest breathers in general, over breathers in general, where they go into 2 or 3 parts going out, as opposed to just that spot. So by honing in on that spot, we can reduce the amount of over breathing we're doing. We can go to exactly where we want to go. We can find our actual diaphragm, because that's where you feel the diaphragm moving. And we can retrain and calm ourselves all with one single explanation, as opposed to breathe into your feet or belly breathe, which is really unhelpful, because actually that's not where you want to be going at all. That was just somebody's interpretation of how you could simplify it. So this is my absolute love. And the R spots was the third one. So you can go and watch the TEDx that I did for that to find out more about the R spots and what that's impacting.
This is incredible.
We are all breathless, which is the wrong advert you want for this. But Jane, you have been an absolute breath of fresh air today. Thank you so
Such
much.
a good pun, that one. I love it.
I've been working on that. I've been working on that all show. What haven't we asked you?
Don't know.
There's so much that we could, but you know.
Well, yeah, we should be finishing by now, but this has been just a blast, hasn't it, ladies?
It's been awesome. You're amazing. This is just.
I've had fun. Thanks, guys. I love it when people just go, "You can talk about what you love now, Jane."
Yeah,
absolutely. And the captive audience, I love it. There's nothing better than someone like, you know, on a bus or a train right next to you, where you're like, oh, they don't know it yet, but by the end of this journey, they're gonna know all about their breathing.
You don't know me, but I'm gonna know your diaphragm.
Exactly. But if you ever want free training from me, you know, don't approach me. Just be next to me on a train.
Breathing badly.
I think Jane should take part in our word of the week.
Well, no, because the thing is, right, our word of the week this week, Jane has not been talking it, has she?
What is it?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Who's forgotten the word of the week? Hang on a second. It's the word of the week.
Every time.
There we go. Gibberish.
Gibberish.
So why have we chosen that one this week?
A friend of mine suggested it, and it means unintelligible or meaningless speech or writing. So nonsense, basically. So as an interesting word to try and put into a social media post over the coming 7 days.
Well, from what Jane was saying about some of the content she sees, then maybe that wouldn't be that difficult. Well, have you got a question there, Odessa? Is that why you put your hand up?
No, it was just volunteering that I might speak gibberish.
Oh, right. Well, you definitely don't talk gibberish, do you? And there was no gibberish.
I've got 3 kids. I absolutely do.
Oh, right, fair enough. Fair enough. Jane, you have been absolutely delightful today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun. Great Friday afternoon.
Awesome.
People can get hold of you on LinkedIn. I suggest you all follow and connect with Jane because her LinkedIn profile is just awesome. Where else can we find out about you, Jane?
You can find me on LinkedIn, so under Jane Tarrant. You can find me on Instagram at Link Breathing.
Fantastic.
And I am on others, but I try not to spend too much time on social media in those areas. But what I would ask is, what my little ask is, I won't tell you which day because, somebody, can use that against me. But my birthday was this week. And I would love, as a birthday present for anyone who wants to do it, is for them to go and watch my TEDx talk and then share it with someone. So it's called How to Optimize Your Breathing Habits.
Nice.
That is a lovely birthday present as well.
In the comments.
I think so. I mean, it's 1,000 people there. I think it's had about 1,900 views, which is, good. It's like almost double.
They went back for more.
But I'd like a few more, please. I'd like people, not because I want the views, but because I want it to reach the world. It's free education. I want to get out there. And obviously you can see how passionate I am. So if anybody would like to watch it and share it, I'd be much appreciated.
Well, if you put it on your LinkedIn profile so that we can all see it, we're all going to go to your LinkedIn profile now anyway, because we want to just find out more about you because you are absolutely amazing.
It's in the featured section already.
It's in the featured section already.
Yeah.
Bravo. I found it. I'm going to do it.
Yes.
Excellent.
Share away. That would be lovely because that's why I do it, for people to share.
Super duper.
Amazing.
Jane, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ladies, what a great show.
That has been a great show. It has.
Thank you to
next week.
Oh, good job you remembered that because I'd forgotten all about that. We've got the lovely Aaron, haven't we?
We have got the amazing Aaron. Have you got his slide?
I have got his slide and his steps and his swing. Here we go. There he is, Aaron Patrick. So he's standing in for me. You won't have me next week because I'm going to an event in Bristol where it's a speaking event, Jane. So I'm going to go to see a load of speakers and learn a little bit more about speaking. So who knows? I might be
just lovely ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all the amazing all the comments again. Thank you so much. Tina's asked a great question of you, Jane. Can you work on your breath at any age? She works with a lot of older people.
Yes, you can. My most recent client I took on last week, sorry, not my most recent, one of the most recent I've seen in person so far, is 89. So
Wow.
this, and the oldest person I've ever worked with was in their 90s. That was my grandpa, but this is a proper sort of paying client, I suppose, my grandpa. So yes, you can do it at any age. There are some things that can limit the progress, obviously down to like posture. So older people are sometimes more hunched over and those sort of things, which can cause some issues, but it doesn't mean you can't improve it. Optimize basically for what you have. And therefore I encourage it at any age, even little ones, little tiny ones, even babies and stuff. You can pinch their little lips closed for a moment and help encourage tongue posture back into the roof of their mouth and nasal breathing. We should be talking about this at every age. It's, we're all humans. We breathe the whole time. Thank you for that. Look at that.
Absolutely. Jane, you've been delightful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies. I won't see you next week, but these two lovely ladies will see you next week. But until then, cheerio.
Take care.